Before after, I want to introduce you, if you've never met, Larry Johnson, Deputy Director of the U.S. State Department's Office of Counterterrorism, formerly at the CIA, Directorate of Operations, CIA Operations Center, a prolific analyst in the Directorate of Intelligence, and also received 2 exceptional performance awards while at the CIA. Currently, I need to thank Larry hard. He is involved in something that I don't know. I can't know. He'd probably have to kill me if he told me. But I know he's at Southcom today and taking 10 minutes out of his day to give me the reaction of, as a classmate of Valerie Plame's and a CIA guy from this Libby trial. Hi, Larry.
Hey, Randy. It's a good day to be in southern Florida. It's snowing in D.C.
I know. It's snowing here, too. I'm in New York, but I have the house in South Florida, which I'm sure you know because, you know, you're an analyst in CIA, and I'm a, enemy of the government, apparently.
No, you're a woman who served her country honorably.
So you know that, huh? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I listen to you once in a while.
I know. And I'm grateful. I really am. To have listeners like you is just beyond, anything good. So let me just ask you, what was the reaction, the CIA, Cheney obviously gave her name. Now, there's no question that Cheney told Scooter and others to give her name and to publicize her name as a way to get back at Joe Wilson for writing something that took away part of, and a major part of, Dick Cheney's buildup or selling of this war, which was the nuclear threat, the uranium.
Correct.
Okay, so now that's happened. Scooter, perjury, obstruction of justice, we got it. What happens to Cheney now?
Well, what ought to happen is he ought to be impeached, and I think it's incumbent upon both the Democratic House and the Democratic Senate to convene hearings and invite Patrick Fitzgerald up, because I'll be willing to bet that Fitzgerald chose not to indict Cheney, preferring to have that issue of Cheney's responsibility taken up through the political channels, the constitutional channels.
All right, let's work through this, because most of the audience agrees with you. And I'm not clear that that's the best way to go. I do have an alternate way to go. But the impeachment, okay, let's think this through. If Dick Cheney has what he says he has, which is the power to declassify anything, and he had that power before he gave Valerie Plame's name out. We looked it up. He said, it goes back to March of 2003. An executive order was issued. And we can, discuss the legalities with lawyers all day long about whether or not the vice president really could do that.
Right.
But he says he had the authority, and he believed he was acting under his authority to declassify.
And I think there's a real question about that because, as you know, with all classified material, there comes a disclaimer at the end about originator control. And originator control means it's the person who developed or first classified the information that ultimately has the authority to declassify. And just because Dick Cheney's sitting in the vice president's chair doesn't mean he has authority unilaterally to decide to release any bit of information. There's a process and a procedure to go through. He, in this case, did not follow that process or procedure. But apart from that, just the organized effort to smear the Wilsons. And I think, as I said, I put up a blog piece last night, at a minimum, this is wonderful news for Joe and Val in their civil case.
Exactly.
If that case goes forward, Dick Cheney is going to enable the Wilsons to become some major philanthropic benefactors.
See, and and let's say, I like your argument. I do. I like it a lot that because the CIA controlled her, her clandestine status, that it was not for him to declassify. It would have to have come from Tenet. It would have to have come from the directorate. It had to come from whoever controlled that information. I like that argument. That's the best one I've heard so far.
At a minimum, a written request to declassify that information.
Which obviously that was not done because else why would the CIA send a criminal referral?
Right. And the damage, and again, we can't get into this in the public arena, but there was more damage done than simply outing Valerie and simply exposing the cover company, Brewster Jennings. I'm aware of some of the dimensions of it. It's far larger, far more damaging than the American people have been told.
It is.
And they probably never will know the full dimensions of it. I mean, even with cases like Aldrich Ames or FBI agent Robert Hansen, who worked for the Soviets, the full dimension of their damage has never been disclosed. And, that's probably as it should be in order to protect some of the secrets.
Yeah, and I got a funny feeling this isn't the first time she's been damaged, and she might be used to it. She might understand it a whole lot better. But my beef is exactly your beef. My beef is Brewster Jennings, the larger picture, everything that they set up over, 20 years to pose as energy analysts. Tell me what, I don't know if there was an after-action report ever completed. Obviously, you have some information that you don't want to share. I respect that.
The agency would have followed normal procedure when you have a public disclosure like this, and one of the first steps is for the Directorate of Operations to conduct an internal review to determine what assets, if any, were compromised, and then to trace that through in terms of who could have known, and as you go through sort of the outer third, fourth, fifth ring, it's like dropping a rock in a pond. You get the rings spread out, and you want to see how far the damage could have gone.
So that was
done.
So that would, because that's standard operating procedure.
Correct.
Okay, and so as somebody who worked there, you would know that's standard. There's nothing special that you're telling me, right?
Yeah, right. And there's no way they would not have done it. Now, they have not submitted a formal written report to either of the intelligence committees. I was told that they did brief Jay Rockefeller and Pat Roberts on the Senate intelligence side, that they were briefed orally on the findings of this, but, they're not in a position, or should they be in a position, to go out and publicly disclose the nature of that damage.
Now, how do we ever try for the original crime if the original crime is that, people were tortured or killed, if that is a safe...
Well, that's where I think it's incumbent now upon the Senate Intelligence Committee under Jay Rockefeller's direction to hold classified hearings on this so that all members of the committee can be briefed not only orally but see it in writing and get a full disclosure within that committee of the damage, so that they can come out and say, yeah, there was damage done here, and it is, one of the charges of impeachment against Dick Cheney ought to include the consequences of that at a time of war, that he compromised national security assets far beyond just merely damaging the career of Valerie Wilson. And please, the damage to her career was no minor inconsequential thing.
No, she's left the CIA. I mean, this is a woman who devoted her whole life to it, whether you think so or not, whether people can't imagine a woman doing it or whatever. They look at her and they think, she's so blonde and pretty, she can't, well, screw you, she did. And, right. and that's the way it is. But she's not making it about herself. I don't think she's making it about herself. I think she's making it about Brewster Jennings. And perhaps...
She really is one of the most selfless, unassuming people you would ever meet. She is... she's not a drama queen. She's not a prima donna. She is, very level-headed, and really was a credit to the CIA of what a good case officer should be, regardless of being male or female. She was the epitome of what a sound intelligence officer should have been.
So here's where we are. We now know, or I'm talking to you, that it would have been standard operating procedure for the CIA, after a covert operative's name appears in the press, to do some sort of a damage assessment, especially when, and no one talks about this, there was the second article by Novak, second column, right, where he puts Brewster Jennings' name in the paper. Now they have to do some sort of a damage review. They have to do an after action. Is it safe to say that anybody working for Brewster Jennings, after that became public information, would be tortured, captured, or killed? Is it safe to think that is how sensitive these covert operators are, dealing with Aramco or whoever the hell they have to deal with?
Yeah, when a company like that gets disclosed, and if it turns out that there were more than just one individual associated with that company, and then that company was working overseas and in contacts with a variety of people, and had been at different conferences, et cetera, you begin to get an understanding that you're not talking about even 3, 4, 5 people. You could be talking about 100, 200 people possibly.
This is such a sin. I mean, it's a crime. It's just a crime. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Okay, so The first place to look is not necessarily at Nancy Pelosi in the House or John Conyers at the Judiciary Committee.